All right. So for day 2 of this stuff, some of it is going to be the same as what we were talking about a little bit yesterday. Plus, all the stuff that we're going to do today other than one piece is not new information. Yes. A lot of it is the same. We've done it already. It's just putting it all together again. Now, the first ones that they're going to give you is they're going to give you an equation like this. It's going to say f of x equals x to the third minus 4x squared minus x plus 4. And it's going to say find all real zeros. That's what it's going to say. Find all real zeros. So at this point in your life, in this semester, what have you done to find zeros?
Synthetic division.
That's one option.
Factoring.
Graphing is another option. Factoring is another option. Those are your options. So you tell me, you guys, what would you like to do?
Graphing.
Graphing, me too. Okay? So what needs to happen is we need to have someone type this into your graphing calculator.
I vote Kate does it.
Hold on. I'm going to talk about first. Okay, now, first thing that we did was we graphed or we typed it in there, okay, and then we saw what it looked like. So it's going to say find the zeros. Remember what zeros are? Mm-hmm. What are they?
Are they on the x-axis?
They're where it crosses the x-axis. Right. How many, is that about what it looks like?
Yeah.
Is that what you guys are getting? Some of you with different windows might look a little bit different, but ultimately it's the same thing. You just told me zeros were where it crosses the x-axis. How many times does this cross the x-axis?
Twice. 3 times. Sorry.
3 times. 1, 2, 3. Okay, there are 3. And how did I know there was going to be 3?
Because the exponent was 3.
The exponent was 3, so therefore that's the most it can have. On the one that Danny asked me to do from her assignment from yesterday, we had 2 that didn't exist or they weren't real. They were still there, they just weren't real. And all we're doing is finding the reals. Now, you've done this for me already with your calculator. Do you guys remember where to go on the calculator to find the zeros?
Second trace.
Good. Second trace, and then which one is the 0?
2.
Number 2. Now, just to remind you guys on how it works. When you're going up a hill, okay, remember the first thing with your calculator is it will say left bound. So when you're going up the hill, left needs to be below the x-axis, and right needs to be above the x-axis. So if I'm finding this first one on the left here, I need the cursor for the left bound to be down here, and the right bound to be up here. Right now, when you initially click on it, it should be blinking right here on this one, right? So left arrow over so that you're down below the axis somewhere. Hit enter. Then you need the right arrow so that you're above the axis somewhere and hit enter. And then remember, it'll say guess. Do we want to take a guess? No, just hit enter. And what number it comes out?
-1.
-1, 0 is the ordered pair for that 0. Will the y-coordinate always be 0 for zeros? Yes. Okay. So you found this one. Now for the next one. Now we're going down the hill. So therefore when you're going down the hill, left bound is above, right bound is below. Then don't make a guess, just hit enter. What comes out on the second one? 1, 0. Should have them as order pairs. And then as far as the last one goes, is this an uphill situation or downhill?
Uphill.
Uphill. So left would be below the line. Right would be above the line. Don't make a guess. Just tell me the answer. 4.
0.
Can you guys handle that?
Yeah.
That's the first third of your assignment today. you're going to be given this equation, and it's going to say, find the real zeros. You guys gave me a list of options. You told me graphing, you told me synthetic division, you told me factoring. All of them are fair game, but I'm going to guess that you're probably going to use the graphing calculator, and I don't blame you. Your book talks about what they call the location principle, and all they meant for you to do for that is look at the, when you look at or type in the equation, you actually look at the table, and you see where it changes from positive to negative and try to pinpoint in between there, or it might actually be in the table itself. But are you guys going to use this way instead?
Yes.
Probably, and I don't blame you. Yes, Devin?
I was just wondering why, like, if we've already done this, why are we doing it again? Like, same thing.
Okay, because on the other ones, I kind of went ahead and made you do that when we didn't call them zeros at that point.
Oh,
So I was preparing you for this day.
gotcha.
All right. The second third of your assignment is going to be the ones that is going to require you to do the most work today.
Oh, no.
Here's what it's going to say. Same type of thing like that, but it's going to say graph the polynomial or the function, whichever one you want to call it. Then it's going to say identify the X intercepts, which are also known as the zeros. Identify any local minimums or maximums. Do you remember when we found the turning points or the hump points?
Yeah.
Okay. And then identify the intervals which it's increasing and decreasing. We haven't done that for a while, but we have done it. We did it in chapter 2, but it's been a long time since we've done it. Okay? So on something like this, where it says g of x equals 2x to the third
No, do this one.
plus 8x squared minus 3. The first thing that I would do if I were you is I would graph it.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see what it looks like. Is it somewhere in that vicinity? Is that what you guys think? Now, one of the things about this is that, correct me if I'm wrong, but the main window cuts it off about here. So you might have to adjust your window to go up or down. Remember how you do that? It's in the window. And then X minimum means left, X maximum means right. Y minimum means down, Y max means up, if you need to adjust it. Okay? Now, how many zeros does this problem have?
33.
3. Okay? So here's what they're going to ask you to do. Again, the first part of it says graph. Did you graph the equation?
Yes, we did.
Yes. So that was the first step, graph. The second thing that it's going to ask you to do is X intercepts, or also known as the zeros. That's exactly what we just did on the last problem. So how many did you say we had? 3. So number 1, number 2, and number 3. We have 3 zeros. Can anybody find them?
Do you want me to round them?
What do you get, Patience?
It's like -0.9, -3.9.
Negative 3.9 and 0. That was the furthest one on the left, yeah? Okay, what about the second one? Anybody get it? Negative 0.67. Did anybody else get that? Yeah? Okay, good. How about the last one? Now, one of the other things that while you guys are finding that, I'm assuming, are you guys going left to right when you're finding your zeros?
Yes, we are.
Okay, just checking. You went the other way? So what's the last one?
0.57.
0.57 and 0. Anybody else get that? Or close to it? Now, especially when you have ones like this with the rounding issues, I would go probably 2 decimal places. That's probably good enough. Okay? So, is everybody comfortable with finding the zeros?
Yeah.
All right, again, you've just identified where it crosses the x-axis. So you've gotten this point, and this point. Nice job. Now, the third thing that you're going to be doing is you're going to be finding any minimums or maximums. What is a minimum, for instance?
You want like an example, or
What does it mean to be a minimum?
that's
Very
the
bottom.
lowest point,
The lowest point or the bottom. What's it mean to be the max?
highest point.
Right. So if I went off of your directions, that is a high point, so therefore that's where the max is, yeah?
Yeah.
What about this low one down here? What's that called again?
That's a minimum.
That's a minimum. Now again, just so that you understand this, these are called local minimums and local maximums, meaning they're at a certain location. Because realistically, this thing goes on forever down and forever up. So in the whole grand scheme of the whole polynomial, it doesn't ever have a minimum or a maximum, but it does have 2 local ones, or 2 turning points, or hump points, whatever you want to call them. So when you do minimums and maximums, what button on the calculator do you go for that? Second trace again, and then what?
Then down to 3.
Option 3 says minimum, option 4 says maximum. So which one are you going to find first?
Min.
Min? And then somebody else find max. Anybody have the minimum?
0, negative 3.
0, -3? Does anybody have the max?
I want -1.
Negative 2.6.
No, you don't.
Okay.
And
That's right.
2.67, and then what was the high, or the y?
15.96.
15.96, thank you, patience. Now, couple things with that minimum. Okay, and this is something that I'm going to take another screen and show you guys something, because this is what was happening. Some of you are looking at that minimum and saying, I didn't get 0.3. I got 3, but I got something else. Okay, now, in looking over Sydney's shoulder, she had negative 1.376 e to the -6, I believe, or something like that. Right, Sid?
Sure.
Okay? So for something like that, as soon as you see this right here, this e to the -6, that means you'd have to move the decimal place 6 times over. That's point and then 5 zeros in front of that. That's so close to 0, it just couldn't put a pixel directly on 0.3 for this case, or -3, whatever it was. So when you see this, please be careful. If you see e to the -6 or 7 or 8, 9, 10, 15, whatever, those are 0. It just couldn't put a pixel directly on 0 and then the y coordinate. So be careful with that, okay? I've seen too many people get it wrong because of that part. Is everybody okay with the minimum and maximum?
I believe so.
Everybody all right? Okay, now, to remind you guys about how to do intervals in which it's increasing or decreasing. So right now, you're going to ride the roller coaster. What's the roller coaster doing right now?
Increase.
Increasing, it's going up. So it increases, so this will be step 4 now. Where does it stop at?
The maximum.
You guys told me the maximum was 2.67 and 15.96. 15.96 is the y-coordinate, that's the highest point. But as far as stopping it goes, it's the x-coordinate that matters. So when I'm saying this, we're saying that it's increasing left of 2.67. How do you represent left? How do you do this? You guys did it a long time ago. And I showed you two ways. First way that I showed you was back old school way, which was less than 2.67. Sorry, should not be a negative.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I wrote it down wrong. All right. We can say that it's increasing when x is less than negative 2.67. That means left of 2.67, okay? Then, back to the roller coaster ride. What's happening now as I go down there? I'm decreasing, right? So now, I go over to my decrease part. And where did I decrease from? From the top, which was at what x coordinate? Negative 2.67. To the minimum, which was at what x coordinate?
0, 3?
0. Don't need the 3. X coordinate, just the x's. So you would have wrote it like negative 2.67 is less than x, which is less than 0. Ugh. So archaic. And then what happens with the roller coaster after you hit the bottom? It increases back up, right? So we had 2 increasings and 1 decreasing. Where does it increase from? What's the x coordinate now that takes over? Where did the minimum stop at?
0.
And where does it go on to the
2.96.
forever? So it's x is greater than 0. This increasing and decreasing stuff, just to let you guys know, I showed you another option of as far as how to write that. And I'm going to show it to you again, just because. Remember I told you that that's one way to do it, and that's probably how you've seen it before. And then I showed you another way that said, hey, when you get to college, this is how you're going to see it. This is how this one would have been written. It would have been from negative infinity, because that goes left, to negative 2.67. Then at negative 2.67 to 0, it decreased. Then from 0 to infinity, it went increasing again. So the one thing about this, just so that you remember, these parentheses mean not included. And all I did was I started on the left side, went to the high point in this case, because that's where it's increasing. Stopped it here. Started it at the same number. Then to the bottom of the decrease, so we got to the minimum. Stopped it here. And then started it up again and went there. This is the same as you writing it as x is less than negative 2.67 and x is greater than 0 and negative 2.67 is less than x, which is less than 0. That's all the same thing. However you want to write that, that's your choice. However, know this. When you get to college, you're not going to see the less than, greater than stuff when it comes to writing this in that type of notation. Now, as far as the third half of your assignment, and again, this is going to be the one that requires you to do the most work. First thing that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to graph it. I think everybody's okay with graphing it, yeah? Second thing would be to find the X intercepts, also known as the zeros. Are you okay with that?
Yes.
Third thing would be any maximums or minimums. Are you okay with that?
Yes.
And then step 4 is tell me if where it increases to decreases and so on. Those questions are going to be the hardest ones you have to do. Then the last half of your assignment is going to ask you, is the function even, odd, or neither? Okay? And when it comes to even, odd, or neither, some of the things that we use that for, or can use it for, is when it comes to graphing, we can actually use some symmetry and whatnot. But realistically, all it's going to ask you to do is just tell me if it's even, odd, or neither. Here's how you do that. It's going to say something like f of x equals x to the 4th plus 3x squared minus 2. if it is even, or if it's odd, I'm going to have a couple different criteria for you. And if it's not even, and if it's not odd, what's the other option? Neither. Right. So the first step that you do is you replace x with negative x and simplify. That's the first step. So I'm going to take all the x's out and I'm going to replace it with negative x. I'm putting negative x into my function. Negative x to the fourth plus 3 times negative x squared minus 2. So now as far as simplifying it goes, if I take negative x times negative x times negative x times negative x, is that positive or negative? Positive, because I have 4 of them, right? So therefore that simplifies down to x to the fourth. Negative x times negative x is what? Positive x squared times 3. 3x squared. And the negative 2 didn't change. So what happened there? If it's even, after replacing the negative x, and it simplifies, if it is the same as original, then it's even. If all signs change, then it's odd. So how does this relate to the original problem? Here's the one that you simplified. Here's the original problem. Are they the same, yes or no? Yeah. So what is this one? Even.
What happens if they're neither? Is that like if one sign changes and not all?
If one sign changes and not all of them? Yes. On the last third of your assignment, all they're asking you is this even, odd, or neither? You plug in negative x and see how it simplifies. If it's the same as the original, it's even. If all signs change, it's odd. If only a couple signs change, that's neither. Okay? So, in doing another one,
Okay, I'm not writing this one.
How did you just find 15? Because the graph is
okay, first thing I'm going to do, put negative x in and let's simplify it and see what happens. What's negative x squared?
X squared, where's the
X squared. What's 5 times negative x?
negative 5x.
Plus 1. Now, how does this relate to the original? Is it A, the same, so everything about it's identical? Is it B, all the signs changed? Or C, none of the above?
None of the above.
None of the above. So if it doesn't do one of those other ones, then that's a neither. Okay? So all you would write for that answer would be neither, and you're done. So again, the first third of your assignment is going to ask you to find the real zeros. Most of you guys are going to use your calculator for that. I'm okay with that. The second third of your assignment is going to have you asking for the 4 things, and I also wrote them up here on the board again. You got to graph it, you got to find the zeros, find any minimums and maximums, and then the intervals which is increasing and decreasing. Then the last third is going to say, tell me whether it's even, odd, or neither. That's how you do that. What do you guys think?
That's pretty easy.
So on page 216 to 217, we're 15 to 45 multiples of 3.